I'm not trying to be funny here, but like feet don't just, fall off. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please do subscribe, and if you're old here, hello again. My name is Kate, this is Sandy, and I do true crime videos and the occasional crazy story time. I kind of noticed that the last couple of videos I did have all been solved cases, and I was like, okay, this is interesting and everything, but one of the main reasons I started doing true crime YouTube was for the unsolved cases, so that more people could be putting their minds at work to kind of try and figure these things out. And so I wanted to do a missing person case this week. And I did ask on Instagram for suggestions for missing person cases. And the first one that came in was the case of Leah Croucher, and that's what I'm going to be covering today. So for future reference, if I'm going to be asking on Instagram or Twitter or whatever for case suggestions, both of those platforms, I'm katephilpott_YT. And I'll also always have a case suggestion form in the description of my videos as well. Alright, let's get into this video. So this is the case of Leah Croucher. Leah Croucher was born on the 14th of August 1999, and she grew up in Milton Keynes in the UK. Oh no. I think I have the hiccups. She had one brother called Hayden and one sister called Jade. She was quite family oriented. She loved her friends and family so much. She would spend a lot of time on social media like any 19-year-old girl, and she was also said to be very kind and very generous. Leah loved writing fan fiction actually, and would publish them online, which is really cool. And she also had a passion for taekwondo because her dad, I'm not sure if he owned the place she did taekwondo classes or if he just instructed there, but he was involved in that whole thing. And Leah and her brother would compete at championship level, which is so amazing. And she actually had her black belt. So like in February of 2019, the Croucher family were preparing for a holiday only a few weeks later. I think probably would have been end of February, start of March. And Leah was so excited about this holiday, and she even helped to plan out like where they'd stay and just was part of the planning process as well, which always makes it so much more exciting when you're going away. But unfortunately, on the 15th of February, the day after Valentine's Day, she would disappear and leave no trace behind. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the circumstances around her disappearance. So the 15th of February 2019 was a Friday, so it was a work day for Leah, and at around 8 AM Leah set off for work. She was on foot, and she would always walk the same kind of route to work. So she'd go up Buzzacott Lane and would end up in Faraday Drive. She was working in an admin role in a finance company, and her shift was due to start at 9 AM. However, that day she would never show up to work. So straight off the bat, this was unusual because Leah was the type of person that was very reliable. If there was some kind of chance that she wasn't going to make it to work, she would let her employers know, but obviously she didn't this day. But of course her family wouldn't be made aware of this until after 6 PM when she didn't arrive home from work. And that evening, Leah Croucher would be reported missing by her family. Leah had never run away before, and as far as her parents were aware, there was no real unusual behaviour leading up to her disappearance. She also hadn't taken any money out of her bank account, she hadn't taken her passport with her, there was no phone usage. So with all of these things together, the family didn't really think that she left on her own accord. Leah was described as 5'2", white, slim, with brown hair to her shoulders, occasionally wearing glasses, and on the day she went missing she was wearing a black padded coat, black skinny jeans, black Converse, and she had a black rucksack on her back as well. And she was also wearing the grey branded hoodie from her taekwondo studio. So soon after her disappearance, some CCTV footage came out, and this would show Leah at 8:13 AM on Buzzacott Lane. And unfortunately, this would end up being the last known sighting of Leah Croucher. But in this footage, she was walking along Buzzacott Lane, like I said, and this was her normal route to work. She seemed to be in no distress. However, further CCTV footage further along her route would show that she never actually made it to Faraday Drive. So that gives us a relatively small area of where something could have gone wrong. And what I don't understand, and I'll show you this as I'm talking through it, is this place was so residential. There were so many houses, and this would presumably be a pretty busy time of the day. Like between 8:15 and 9 a.m. on a Friday morning, a school morning, would you not have like people driving off to work, people bringing children to school, teenagers going to school? Like, how did nobody come forward to say that they saw her that morning along that route? I just don't understand how, in broad daylight, at peak hours, in a residential area, how someone can just go missing. So from here, the search efforts were massive. There were helicopter searches, marine units, dogs brought in, door-to-door inquiries, and so on and so forth. There were a lot of lakes in the area, and to my knowledge, they were all searched. However, the largest one, Furston Lake, was that kind of size where it's so big that even if it was searched, it's not even like definitive that nothing was there. Like it's really hard to search a lake that big. And I do feel like surely something, whether it be her or her belongings or, you know, anything she would have had. She had a whole backpack, probably had some stuff in there. Surely something on her person would float. I don't know. However, nothing came of these searches. But 7 days after her disappearance, her parents would appeal to the public and just ask for any information. They provided the public with loads of information about Leah to paint the type of person she was, which would hopefully kind of get people to connect a bit more. It makes it more than just a name when you actually know more about the person. I could just say Leah Croucher has gone missing and you could be like, well, who's that? But when you know that she was into taekwondo and that she did fan fiction and that like had all these interests and hobbies and stuff, it personalizes the situation and therefore emotionalizes the situations. But they did also let the public know that Leah had not been in contact with any of her friends or family in the last 7 days. She hadn't accessed her bank account, nor has she been on social media. In fact, her mobile phone was turned off only 20 minutes after she was seen on CCTV, so at around 8:34, 8:35 a.m. And as a result of this, it was untraceable. And just as a teenager who loves her family and friends and is obsessed with social media, this was incredibly out of character and therefore incredibly concerning. Fortunately, the police did receive 2 unconfirmed sightings of Leah near Teardrop Lakes in Milton Keynes on the day she went missing, and this would have been about a half-hour walk from where she was last seen. And the only thing about this is she would have had to go past Faraday Drive in order to get there. So, I mean, she could have gone around it. She didn't necessarily have to go through, but I'm not exactly sure where she worked, if her route would normally end on Faraday Drive. I don't know, just so you know, I'm not sure if this was like still on her route to work, but as far as I'm aware, it wasn't, although I'm not 100% sure. Authorities conducted very thorough searches around this area as well, however, there was no sign of Leah. And the police were really on the ball, I feel like, in this investigation. They asked everyone in the area to actually check their gardens, check their sheds in case Leah was hiding or something like that. And it being such a residential area, that meant a lot of people were looking in their own personal spaces, and this unfortunately turned up no leads either. The police had interviewed over 100 potential witnesses and visited about 4,000 homes in search for information, but this turned up nothing either. It just seemed that after that CCTV footage on Buzzacott Lane, that Leah just vanished into thin air. So soon enough, an anonymous donor provided £5,000 as a reward for any information that could lead to finding Leah, in the hope that it would prompt someone to think about things differently or jog someone's memory. Because at this point, the parents and the police knew that someone needed to come forward with more information because they were getting nowhere with the information they had, and they were unfortunately running out of options. Like, the family have been so active in this investigation. It's honestly, it's incredible to see. Like, I so admire their strength. They were regularly appealing to the public, constantly doing something, fundraising, all of this stuff, but unfortunately to no avail. So a few weeks later, police spoke to 3 potential witnesses who claimed to have seen someone matching Leah's description around First and Lake between 9:30 a.m. and 11 a.m. on the morning she vanished. So same hair, same height, everything. But the witnesses claimed that the girl that they saw was visibly angry and upset, possibly even crying, and she was texting with both hands and potentially speaking on the phone. When one of these witnesses passed by again, they said that this girl had seemingly calmed down. So this could definitely mean something, and police did ask the public, like, if you think this was you, please come forward so that we can eliminate it. However, nobody did, so they have never been able to confirm whether it definitely was or definitely wasn't Leah. But the weird thing about this was, on Leah's phone records, there was no record of any usage around this time. So either it just wasn't her, or she had another phone that nobody knew about. So 2 months after Leah first went missing, her family spoke out again. And they stated that when she first went missing, they believed they would have her back soon. But when she didn't come home, they stated that with every day they're filled with more and more despair that another night has come and gone without her. And people have been asking them, you know, how are you doing this? Like, how are you going on? But their response to that was that they just don't know, that they had no choice. So soon after this though, there was a potential lead that came up, and if this was definitely connected to this case, it would have been absolutely groundbreaking. So basically, in Lincolnshire, which is about 2 hours away from where Leah went missing, a human foot was found. There was a massive search done of the area, obviously, because police kind of thought that this foot had been transported there by some kind of animal or whatever. And when they found out more about this foot, they found out that it had been removed from a body within the last year. It belonged to a woman who was around 5'2" and was over the age of 16. So although vague, this does match Leah's description. However, intensive forensic examinations showed that this foot did not belong to Leah. But this is not normal. You never know who this could have belonged to, what missing person this could have belonged to, maybe. So whether this was Leah's foot or not Leah's foot, I still definitely think it's something that needs to be looked into, because like I'm not trying to be funny here, but like, feet don't just, you know, fall off. However, on the note of this foot, police did believe that it was intentionally dismembered, and they have formulated a full DNA profile and everything. They've done really good work with this foot, and they've run this DNA profile against many missing people in the UK, but unfortunately they are no closer to finding out who this foot belongs to, which, I mean, this whole situation just baffles me. How could you not? How could it? Unless there are a lot of missing people who they don't have DNA evidence for or something, but like, sorry, I'm just going down like a little mental rabbit hole here. I'll post any updates about that foot if I ever hear more, but let's just move on. So in May of 2019, Hayden, Leah's brother, got himself in a bit of trouble, and I can totally understand why, and I'm sure you'll understand why as well in a sec. But he was taken to court on charges of threatening this guy called Adnan Chowdhury, who was supposedly an ex of Leah's. So Adnan was 27, so he was a bit older, but Hayden, who was 23 at the time, spoke out on social media about Adnan and saying that he was mistreating Leah, that he was grooming her, and that he suspected that Adnan knew something about Leah's disappearance, which, ooh, that's a really big accusation. But at the same time, this is someone who's confused and grieving and looking for answers. I can totally understand where this came from. But Hayden allegedly sent several threatening messages to Adnan between the 1st of February and the 30th of April, which I find quite interesting because that means it started before Leah went missing. Because remember, Leah went missing on the 15th of February. But yeah, Hayden was taken to court over this, and the judge did have some stern but fair, in my opinion, words. Here's the quote. "You will jeopardize their investigation, they being the police, if you get it into your head that somebody is responsible for it. The police have fully investigated the person you have suspected. There is, at this stage, nothing to support those suspicions. Can I plead with you to behave so that the police can complete this investigation?" And following this, Hayden received a restraining order, which would prevent him from being any less than 25 meters away from Adnan, and also prevented him from contacting him further, obviously. And he was told that if he breached this restraining order, that he would potentially get a criminal conviction. And Hayden was just seemingly really badly affected by his sister's disappearance. He stated on social media that he would continue to write, think and talk about her, and that he would keep her story alive. And in his words, he said, "I will live for her." And I want you to keep that quote in mind, because it will kind of blow your mind when we get to a certain point of this video. So in the following months, more information came out that started to paint a little bit more of a picture of what might have been going on here. So the day before Leah vanished, she had manually turned off her location settings on her phone at around 5:45 p.m. while she was walking home from work. And according to her phone company, this was the first time ever she had actually done this. So you know how like some people will do that because it might help with battery, or you know, it might be a habit they're in. Well, this was the first time Leah had ever done it, so that's a little strange. When she got home from work that day, she got changed and told her family that she was going out to meet a friend. But that wasn't true, because none of her friends had been with her that night. Also, remember that this was Valentine's Day, so it could have been like a romantic setting, and she was lying about who she was going to see that night, so why lie? The big question here is, what or who was she hiding from them? So she was out for about an hour and 15 minutes between 6 p.m. and 7:15, and to this day, this hour and 15 minutes is still time unaccounted for. But Leah's family continued to put out desperate appeals for information, and her sister even climbed Mount Snowdon for a fundraiser. They truly did everything they possibly could have to get Leah back, or at the very least to get answers. I'm going to read out a quote from her father because it is quite moving. So he said, "She was on her way to work. She never arrived. Her clothes are still at home. Her money is still in the bank. Her phone is still unused. Her toothbrush is still in its holder. She was just on her way to work, as normal. We have missed her for 200 days. Special days are even harder than ordinary days. It feels as if water torture would be kinder than this. How can there be no news? How can the sightings across the country that are still being reported by the wonderful public not be her? How can there be so many people willing to help, willing to still be on the lookout and not find her? Someone you know could be the person that knows what happened that day. Have you heard some gossip about the case? Someone bragging? Anything, no matter how small, could be the information we need to find our wonderful, kind, amazing Leah. She has so much to live for. She has the rest of her life in front of her. We just want to give her an enormous cuddle." Alright, let's fast forward to October 2019, because some stuff kind of goes down in October 2019. Essentially, some information came out about Leah's love life around the time she disappeared, and it was pretty massive. Leah's mother, Claire, didn't want to give people the wrong idea of Leah or embarrass Leah in any way, but at this point, they just needed movement. They needed all the information to be known, and they needed answers. So according to her, Leah was having an affair with a committed man at the time she disappeared. This man's identity is not public knowledge, so in the public he's just known as Mr. X. Essentially, this guy she was having a relationship with was either married or engaged. I've seen different sources saying different things, but he was certainly in a committed relationship. He was also an older man. So Leah's mother, Claire, said it started the summer of last year. She talked about this man all the time. It was X this and X that. It was obvious that she had a weakness for him. She would go to see him at night, paying £13 each way for a taxi. And they had spoken about it a lot, but Claire did tell her, don't you go falling for him, he will never be yours. And as the months went on, Claire did have obviously a lot of time to think about Leah's behaviour leading up to her disappearance, and yeah, initially they thought nothing was really all that unusual, but having had all this time to think about it, she realised, well, actually, her temper was quickened. She would sulk a lot more in her bedroom and be a lot more sensitive and also a lot more argumentative. So, I mean, obviously at the time, the parents just put it down to typical teenage behaviour. I know I've put my parents through stuff like that in the past. Sorry, mum and dad. But over time, it became more clear that maybe there was an actual reason for this. And it was around this time that they found out that 12 days before Leah's disappearance, she had lied about her whereabouts as well, on the 3rd of February. So Leah had told her parents that she was staying in a hotel with a couple of friends for like a girly night, like have a couple of drinks, you know, a bit of a gossip, bit of a chat, bit of fun. So her dad dropped her off at a Jury's Inn and they waved goodbye, and that was that. But a few months later, one of Leah's bank statements arrived to the house and it would tell a different story. According to this bank statement, she had actually stayed in a travel lodge that night, not a Jury's Inn. So seeing this discrepancy, her parents approached her friends and asked, you know, were they with her that night and stuff like that, but they said that they weren't. So it sounds like she was meeting a guy, and it sounds more like, you know, she was meeting Mr. X. Because let's be honest, like if you're 19 and you're seeing an older guy who's either married or engaged, you're not going to be like, bye mom and dad, I'm off to the hotel to spend the night with this older guy who's married or engaged. Like, you know, like, yes, you're legally an adult, but you're still living under your parents' roof and therefore your parents' rules. If it was Mr. X that she was going to see, he could have been paying her in cash for, you know, his part of the room or whatever, but obviously he couldn't have it on his bank statements because he was having an affair with her. So yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense. It seems to be the only logical explanation here. But of course, as frustrating as this case is, by the time they figured this out, the CCTV footage from the travel lodge was long gone. And the weird thing is, even Leah's phone records didn't show any evidence of a romantic relationship. So that was kind of unusual. However, she did use Snapchat a lot, and it was plausible that maybe she was connecting with Mr. X through this app, because obviously Snapchat messages are deleted instantly after you've opened them, so there's no paper trail there, and therefore perfect for a secret relationship. But even Snapchat behind the scenes keep records of conversations and everything for up to 30 days because of serious situations like this. But unfortunately, this was way beyond those 30 days, so there was still no way of checking these records. It also crossed her parents' mind that maybe it was possible that Mr. X had given her a new phone, like a secret phone. If he was older, he probably would have had more money, so would have been able to afford doing that, and it would have been a way for them to be in contact more secretly. And I will just bring it back to those sightings at Furston Lake. That would make sense if she was texting on a phone, maybe talking on a phone. Like, there was no record of phone usage on her actual phone that we know of, so maybe she was using this other phone, and that could easily explain this whole situation. But unfortunately, it's pretty difficult, if not impossible, to tell at this stage. But according to the police, Mr. X had an alibi for the time Leah disappeared, which kind of ruled him out, but I don't know. I don't know how convinced I am of that alibi. I don't know the details of the alibi. If it was at a friend's house or at home with his wife or fiance or whatever she was, I would be pretty skeptical. If there's literally CCTV evidence of him like miles away, then yeah, sure, fine. But, you know, if it's kind of just like, oh, well, he was with me, or like a friend or something saying that, then I'd be like, you know. So we're still in October of 2019, by the way. So also in that month, a lead came in that someone had seen what they thought was this distinctive grey hoodie that Leah was wearing the day she disappeared. I say distinctive because it had the multicolored logo of the Taekwondo studio on it, so it was pretty obvious, like there would not be many people with these jumpers. But ultimately, someone claimed to have seen this in one of the local lakes. So obviously there was a massive search done of this lake and the surrounding areas, and again, no further answers actually came of this. So essentially, there was no movement on this case. No matter how hard the police or the family or anyone was working on it, there was no sign of Leah, no sign of any of her belongings. It was just a total dead end from the get-go and throughout. But unfortunately, in November of 2019, the family would suffer yet another major heartbreak. This is when Hayden Croucher, Leah's brother, at the age of 24, took his own life after being discharged from mental health facilities. He just couldn't cope with the lack of information and leads, and it took such a massive toll on him that he just couldn't go on. The parents say he always took on the role of protecting his little sister from the time she was born, and it just came as such a shock. And I'm gonna read some quotes from the family again because I really just feel like it puts it into perspective. So his biological mother, Tracy Furness, said quite a lot on Facebook. I'll just read a little snippet of it. So she says, "On Thursday the 14th of November, my son felt so alone, so lost, so broken that he felt he had no other choice than to take his own life. Hayden was so consumed with pain and anguish, and despite the love around him, it wasn't enough. His mother's love and that of his entire family was not enough. Finding your son, and for Jade, her own brother's lifeless body, both trying in vain to breathe air into him. Hearing your own screams between each compression on his chest. Your daughter is begging him to come back to us and telling him how loved he is. An image of his beautiful, lifeless face forever imprinted in our minds." I don't even know what to say. Then the father also posted on Facebook as well, and he said that he and Hayden had planned to meet up the following day to face all the demons together. And only hours later, police knocked on the door and let him know that Hayden was fighting for his life. And here's a quote from the father as well. "You sit by his bedside and watch him deteriorate by the minute. You have to say your goodbyes. What do you say in that situation? You tell him you love him, you reminisce about funnier times, and you beg him to come back to us. Finally, you have to tell him to go and be at peace. You hold him as he slips away." The family, they've been through too much. To have 3 kids and then in the space of less than a year, one of them be taken away, leaving no clues or answers or closure, and the other to commit suicide. They were both so young. Hayden was 24 at the time he chose to take his own life, and Leah was 19 at the time she disappeared, leaving no trace behind. So obviously they had Hayden's funeral a few days later, and they asked everyone not to wear black but to wear purple and teal because they were the colours of the suicide prevention charity that they were working with at the time. And the family did have this underlying hope that if Leah was alive and out there, that she would have come home for her brother's funeral, but of course she didn't. So they just knew, I mean, they kind of knew all along, but they knew that something really terrible was keeping her from being with them. So on the anniversary of Leah's disappearance, which was the 15th of February 2020, so this year, the reward money doubled to £10,000. At the time as well, Leah's dad was getting very frustrated with the lack of answers, and he threatened to release the name of a man that he believed to know a lot more than he was letting on. Basically, there's someone, I'm not entirely sure if it's Mr. X or someone else, I'm guessing it's Mr. X, but essentially he's threatening to release his name publicly, and release the reasons as to why he believes he's withholding information. And he said he's going to publicly name him whether or not the police agree with it. And I mean, the police obviously don't agree with it, but he said, you know, if this person doesn't come forward themselves, I'm going to out them. The police did follow this up with the fact that they don't believe the person he is talking about, because obviously they have the name. They don't believe that this person knows any more than they're letting on. And just a side note on all of this, the Croucher family don't believe that the police investigated Mr. X enough. According to Leah's dad, the police didn't even search Mr. X's car, home, workplace. They searched the general area that he lives in, but not actually inside or anything like that, which is honestly, what? Mr. X also wouldn't give permission for them to look at any messages between him and Leah because he had destroyed them all. Sorry, what? Like, this is your main suspect. And as far as I've seen, the only reason they ruled him out was because of his alibi. And I don't even know how good that alibi is. So, I mean, just with the extensive resources and everything that they've put into this and all the searches, and I mean, they've searched the family's home like several times, and cars and workplaces. So why not search this guy's stuff? What? I can't wrap my head around that. But anyway, now we're in July of 2020 and there are still no answers. And I say this all the time, but truly, people do not just disappear. You're not just walking to work someday and then walk through a portal and go through to a parallel universe and never return. Like that. And also, like, she was walking to work. That's such a normal thing. Like, most people do that up to 5 times a week. So imagine you're just walking to work and then all of a sudden you can just never return to your normal life again. What? Like, oh God, calm down, Kate. I'm gonna get into the theories for this case. There are actually a few. Obviously, some are more feasible than others that really gets people's minds going. And if I say one thing, that leads one person to comment another thing that's slightly different, and then another person comments on that saying, oh wait, and if that's the case, then this, and like, did they look at that? I'm going down a rabbit hole, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it just can kind of spark people's minds to kind of think more creatively about the situation. Something happened, and I'm sure there is a clue somewhere. Oh, sweet Jesus Christ, that was hot. So the first theory is, of course, that Mr. X had something to do with it. Obviously, Leah was paying for taxis and hotel rooms in the lead up to her disappearance. She met someone unknown the night before her disappearance. The night before! And just before that, she turned off her location settings on her phone for the first time ever. And that night she was only gone for an hour and 15 minutes, which I feel like if you're going to meet someone to chill with someone or whatever, I feel like that's a short enough time. And my thoughts on this are that, okay, well, it was Valentine's Day, so maybe this is the only period of time that he could do before his plans with his partner or wife or whatever she was. Maybe that's why it was such a short amount of time. Or maybe something went wrong that night. Maybe they had an argument, or he made sexual advances to her that she wasn't comfortable with. Or maybe she threatened to out him to his fiance or wife. I do wonder what her behavior was like when she got home that night. Just the reason I mentioned something potentially going wrong is that could be a precursor for what happened the following day. Obviously that is speculation, but it is something that could definitely make sense too. Another thing that's suspicious about Mr. X is, for some reason, Leah's father believes that he knows more than he's letting on. And it's not public knowledge, but he's threatening to release it. And that might happen in the near future. We don't know. Like, why is he so set on it? He's not just set on it for no reason. It could be something substantial, something that makes him look more suspicious, you know? Okay, the second theory is that Joseph McCann had something to do with it. So you're probably like, who the hell is Joseph McCann? Like, I haven't mentioned him once in this video. Well, let me tell you, this was a man that was accidentally released from prison around the time of Leah's disappearance in early February 2019. He lived in Buckinghamshire in his parents' house, and this was the larger area that Milton Keynes is a part of, so I'm not sure whereabouts in Buckinghamshire, but with what I'm about to say next, I really don't think it matters. Because from the 21st of April to the 6th of May, Joseph McCann abducted and raped several people, which led to a manhunt for him. Interestingly enough, he did attend his first probationary appointment on the 15th of February, which was the day Leah went missing. But unfortunately, there's no record for some reason of what time that appointment was, so it could be an alibi for him, or it could make him look even more suspicious. I don't know. But I will also say that the police have never publicly named Joseph McCann in relation to Leah's disappearance, but I do just think that is quite interesting for him to be released from prison a week or two before she went missing. He was living in the area, he abducted and raped a few people. Like, the third theory is that Leah committed suicide. This is a theory that should be thought about, of course, because something obviously happened to her, so who's to say that somebody else was responsible for it? And maybe it was her, but there's two things that don't really add up for me with this theory, and that's, number one, there was no history of mental health issues or, you know, no real signs of her being in a dark place. Secondly, and we come across this over and over again, there's no body. If you commit suicide, you can't exactly hide your body. I also find it a bit unusual that, like, she would bother getting up, getting dressed and heading towards work that day if her actual plans were to go and commit suicide somewhere, unless it was one of those things where, you know, she didn't want to alert her parents by staying home. But yeah, ultimately I don't think it's a very strong theory because she hasn't shown up anywhere, but it is still worth putting out there. The fourth theory is that she ran away. And let me tell you, if she did run away, she did a damn good job of it, because really, like, no bank account use, no phone use, no social media use. Like, of course, there's the possibility that she has a new phone, new bank account, new identity, new social media accounts. But like, how, oh, I don't know, I just feel like she didn't have her passport. I don't know. Also, she would likely be aware of the countless appeals that her family have made, and she would likely be aware that her brother committed suicide. And if that was the case, like, how could she possibly live with not going to his funeral or seeing her family in this much pain? Would she not at least let the police know that she is okay, but she just doesn't want to come home? Because yeah, like, you're allowed to do that. If you have decided to do that, it's pretty hard to just make contact again. And the fifth and final theory I have for you today, and I haven't actually seen this anywhere, but I'm shocked that nobody else has said it, or at least as far as I've seen, no one said it, and it's definitely something worth considering in my opinion, and that is that the partner of Mr. X had something to do with it. You know, we all kind of have the assumption that if there's an older man involved or a taken man involved, that, you know, he must have had something to do with it. And if we're going off statistics, then makes sense that we assume that. But what if their relationship was going great and they got on really well and they had no drama and they were loving the, I don't know, the adrenaline of the secrecy of the relationship? Maybe the partner became suspicious, like, why are you so happy all of a sudden? I'm not exactly sure why she hasn't been mentioned at all, because if she knew about this affair, that is a strong motive to want Leah out of the picture, because the identity of this couple is unknown to the public. I don't know if she even knows about the affair still. I mean, I'm sure if Mr. X has been looked into, that she knows about it. And if she does, I mean, are they still together? Like, I honestly have no idea. Maybe they have looked into her, like, truly I have no idea, but that's definitely something that I think could have had something to do with it. I would really love to hear what you guys have to say about this, because so many leads, no answers, and like nothing leads to anything. It's so awful. Like, and obviously this family, the Croucher family, is now a percentage of what it was before. I don't know. What do you think happened to Leah Croucher? Do you think she's alive, or do you think something more sinister happened that day? And if so, who do you think is responsible? Of course, if there are any updates on this case, I will be tweeting about it. I'll be Instagramming about it. My Instagram and Twitter are katephilpott_YT. And I did just want to say thank you to Elise, who requested this video. And sorry, Elise, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Sandy, have you got anything you want to plug? Come here. Sit. Good girl. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like, comment down below, and turn on the notifications because I upload every Friday at 3 p.m. I've also started doing an IGTV every Tuesday on mini mysteries, cases that, you know, I wouldn't be able to do a full video about because there's not a whole lot of information. Sandy, where are you going? And that allows me to cover twice as many cases each week, which is fantastic. That's about it. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.